Porsche Exchange, it's all about creating a legendary ownership experience that embodies our guest lifestyle. Our Porsche service team utilizes cutting-edge technology that delivers a transparent service visit and keeps us in constant contact with our guests. And I can't think of anyone more qualified to work on your Porsche, new or classic, than our Porsche certified technicians. Whether you're a longtime guest or new to our dealership, I welcome you to experience legendary at the Porsche Exchange. If you're a Porsche owner looking for reliable, convenient service without leaving the comfort of your home or office, look no further and take advantage of the Exchange at Home complimentary pickup and drop-off service exclusively at the Porsche Exchange in Highland Park.
It's the month of May and we're back home again. No, not in Indiana. We're in Deutschland. And a win at the only German track on the series schedule will be highly coveted. So expect some fierce fights at the front. Let's see who gets the W on this car's native soil as we get ready to watch the PCA Sim Racing Series 10 Pro Class live here on Podium Esports. Hi, I'm Joe Peak, and joining me in the booth tonight is Kenneth Bueno. Cameron Auberdon is on social media with Ryan Bauer producing while using cameras provided by Dougie Beard. But before we get to the racing, Series 10 is brought to you by the Porsche Exchange, which has been family owned and operated for over 40 years. Located on the North Shore of Chicago, the Porsche Exchange has grown to be the largest volume Porsche dealer in the entire Midwest. Along the way, they've won the Porsche Premier Dealership Award for many years in a row, and has been chosen to be one of the few Porsche exclusive manufacturer dealerships in the entire country. Find out more at 4Porsche.com. or follow them on Instagram at Porsche Exchange. Also, Six Sigma Sim Racing is proud to announce the Season 10 Clean Driver Award. One driver in each PCA Sim Racing class will win a Six Sigma Sim Racing $250 gift certificate. This goes to whoever earns the fewest incident points and license penalty points from their best 6 races this season. For more information, head to sixsigmasimracing.com. Well, Kenneth, we are here at the Hockenheim ring, and it might not look like it used to, but it's still quite a challenge.
It is definitely a challenge. It was way longer in the original format of this Hockenheim ring track, but as well as it's gotten updated, it really added a lot of personality and kept a lot of the character of this track as well. It's back home, like you said, for these Porsche cars, and this track is certainly going to step things up for this schedule. We've got a variety of corners, whether they're hairpins, slow corners, got some really windy sections, and then that last sector through turns 11, that Mobile 1 curve, all the way to turn 16 at Suit Curve, back to the start-finish line. Many different types of corners, many different types of things that you should expect to see as a driver, and that's going to make this race, and from qualifying practice, very competitive.
Indeed, and it's been an interesting season in terms of competitiveness because, well, Wyatt Gooden's been racing, and while he currently holds the top spot, he's missed his 2 rounds. He has 2 zeros there in his drop week, so he's basically under the gun to perform, and, well, he's not here. And Trey Drawhorn is not here. So everybody that you see down below that pretty much is, and have a good opportunity to try to overtake them. In fact, they likely will overtake them in points unless they absolutely trip and fall on their face today, which, you know, we could see some stranger things out there. So we'll have to watch and see. But right now, the door is wide open for Lion, Amarin, Pies, and Sang. Mostly, we're expecting Lion and Amarin to be ones to watch out for, especially since Raphael's looked very quick in practice and even quicker in the qualifying itself. Now, before we get to the racing, a reminder that PCA Sim Racing's social media offers in-race reports, breaking news, and announcements through Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. To subscribe, key in the platform name and add /PCA Sim Racing. All right, we're getting the last couple cars with times in here. We've got just over a minute left in the qualifying. And like I said, Amarim looking quick. Sang, who's finished his, is also up there. And we were talking about it, both the practice and the qualifying times here, Kenneth, is extremely tight. So the pro class living up to its name.
Yeah, that's definitely true. We've seen in practice and even some bits of qualifying here as it's starting to wrap up that these drivers at the top of the charts are within maybe 0.2 of a second or less. So maybe we're going to see a fantastic show once we get to race time, and these guys are going to be all bunched up and closed in together. We still have some more that are putting in their times. This is Jacob Schum in the number 56. Currently P18 on the board with a 139.5, but I mean, these cars are so competitive, and with this setup and with the way this track is built, it's really become a perfect coupling to have this type of tight point situation between Lyons and Amarim, as the top two, Gooden and Trey Drawhorn, are not here tonight. So we're going to see a lot of fun for sure.
Schum going a little faster, but only up to 17th. And in fact, 16 cars out of our 18 are within 1.1 seconds of one another. It is very tight, and that's it for your qualifying. So Amarim is going to be starting on the pole with Justin Sang. Beside him, Leif Peterson will be third, and Jesse Lyon will start from fourth. After that, Chris Braun is P5. Then it's Chris Pies in sixth position, followed by Thomas Briggs, seventh, and Ryan Cowley, eighth. Then fifth row sees Derek Cyphers, flanked by Rich Minkler. Ken?
Nick Facciolo in the number 717 is 11th. On beside of him will be Jonathan Waltman in the 7 car. Patty Patterson rolls from 13th on the grid. Nick Melorano on the outside in P14 at Dunkin' Donuts Porsche. Enrico Gregorato in the 771 will be the last one inside the top 15. Then Rick Reinsberg, Jacob Schum, and Dale Green will round out the 18 potent car field. Joe, here from Hockenheim Ring.
And it's a standing start. If you tuned in last night, you saw how tricky it can be into the first corner. Thankfully, didn't have any incidents there. But boy, did they have to tiptoe to make sure that we didn't run into any major problems. Let's see if we can get through it once again, as we're just waiting on Amarim. Looks like he's out there, as well as Pies. That means we're ready to go. The engines now begin to rev as the lights come up. And the green flag is out off the line. Actually looks fairly decent for Raphael. Justin Sang not able to try and get beside him as they plunge towards the north curve. A little bit of a look to the inside, maybe contact there as Leif Peterson gets spun around. He goes into the runoff. Thankfully, he does not hit anybody or anything else. He'll be able to get going, but we saw a lot of penalties last night, Kenny. I wonder if we've got another one on the way.
Yeah, for sure. Race Control is going to be looking at that. Jesse Lyon just hopped over the radio probably to apologize there to Peterson for the bit of contact in that first corner. It is very treacherous, and Joe, it can narrow down very quickly at a high rate of speed. We saw them already stepping up to full song. Bit of that contact, it sends Peterson all the way to the back of the field, but already Amarim leading Sang off of the hairpin corner. And so far, most of your field all closed in together. A bit of a side-by-side battle at around P6.
Yeah, I was kind of impressed there. The Spitz car usually sees cars come together, but they all managed it quite well. But now they're into the Mercedes arena, and still side by side between Ryan Cowley and Chris Brown. And it looks like, or Braun rather, looks like Chris Braun's going to be able to come out ahead of the pair as we watch from on board. Chris Pies, who has a little bit of a blinking problem, but he's not going to let that stop him from trying to be on the attack. And now Cowley has lost 2 positions in 1 lap.
And Cowley has really struggled here on this opening lap. But again, this is a very long race, so you're going to see this happen. The ebbs and flows will occur, and drivers like Cowley might just get a little more comfortable later on and be able to step forward in the running order. But for Chris Pais, this is an opportunistic place and race in particular, because he's pretty close in the championship to Raphael Amarim and Jesse Lyon, who, if he can beat them, might just overstep both of them heading into the next race. And you're right on board with Nick Melorano, the Dunkin' Donuts scheme, and with the colors on his clothing. I love the matching system there for Melorano, but he's under fire. Jacob Schum for P12.
Yeah, on the inside, Schum actually manages to sneak it in there into the parabolic entry, but he doesn't have the job done. And big slip up there for Melorano. He has to back out of it, unfortunately, and that's going to cost him another one, as that's Gregorato now streaking past as they look for the braking down into the Spitz car. Late move down to the inside, but I don't think he's quite close enough. Whoa, late into the corner there for Gregorato, and good heads up by Schum to not let that lead into an incident.
And you really have to keep your eyes peeled in split car, because it can really get dangerous when you're hopping on the brakes, and it can be very easy, Joe, to get a little too confident, get eager, and then just completely dive bomb that corner. Unfortunately, no one makes contact and everybody stays okay. Also of note, Joe, from race control, they're taking no action on the contact between Leif Peterson and Jesse Lyon. It appears that was just a racing incident. Both of them made accidental contact and nobody would get a penalty. So that's the fortunate thing for Jesse Lyon. For Peterson, he's going to hope for some better recovery now as he tries to look on Paddy Patterson for position.
Yeah, he's still down in 16th. Unfortunately, we've got a replay of that start. And yeah, they're thinking some net code involved in this. So drivers maybe just close enough that unfortunately the sim thought there was something down to the inside. And yeah, it looked very, very gentle, even if there was contact. So kind of don't blame them. You talked about it. It narrows down there into that first turn.
Yeah, it does. And it's first lap, opening corner. No one has the intention of wrecking anyone. And Jesse Lyon, you know, he wants to be as clean as possible. And that's just a little accidental scenario, right? It just happens right in a split second. It's really hard to react in time. And all of a sudden you have that contact happening. So fortunately, no penalties assessed to Lyon on that incident. We know it wasn't intentional, but he's really picking up the pace. He is starting to catch up to Justin Tseng in that 188. He's been putting a little pressure, and I'm surprised, Joe, that they're not as close to Rafael Amarim as I expected they would be. We saw them so close in qualifying and practice that I anticipated all three of them to be right on each other's bumpers, but it's kind of just second on back fighting for their spots, and Amarim just running away.
It's still early days, though. I wonder what we're going to see in terms of the tire wear, because it did seem like it cost some drivers last night in the club class where it kind of wore them out a little bit, and they are definitely pushing the cars a little too hard there. Does he get into him? Oh, with the leader spins at the same time. That's Amarim off as Jesse Lyon nearly ran into the side of Tseng. How did he get away without getting hit? Now Thomas Briggs is into second. It suddenly erupts with two separate incidents happening at exactly the same time. Let's take another look.
Synchronizing mistakes by both of your leaders, first and third, and it was Rafael Amarim catching the grass, Joe Peak, and we saw this before in multiple races with this GT3R car where you can catch the grass and it loses all types of grip. And it happened there with Jesse Lyon. It looked like he just overcooked the corner and did the exact same thing. There's some curving right there before you get to the actual corner, but they caught the grass right before the blue and white stripes on the right side of the racetrack. And that's Thomas Briggs, who sees the C's part for him, and he's got to look at the lead on Justin Tseng now.
And Tseng was tap dancing amongst the landmines. My goodness. He was just far enough outside on both of their situations that he was hit by neither car. That was absolutely unbelievable. And he's got about a half a second over Briggs. So this is not over. Briggs could try and fight him for what is now going to be potentially for the win between the pair of them. And Braun is super happy about this one because he's now up onto the podium and has caught up a bit of time.
You know, Joe, sometimes it's better to be lucky than to be good. I think for Justin Tseng, he got miraculously lucky that he didn't get hit by either one of those cars. But now he saw it happen in front of him. He got by. Now is his opportunity to pull away and take the lead. Just take the control of this race without having any pressure behind him. I know Thomas Briggs is there, but if Tseng can just have some more breathing room and kind of shove him out a little bit, it might just help his case. Ryan Cowley here further back, P6, working on Chris Peiss, and Jesse Lyons with that mistake has only somehow fallen back to fourth. So he was just far enough ahead that he did not fall back that many spots, and he's working on Chris Braun in the 258 too. So maybe not necessarily the worst case scenario for Lyon, but for Rafael Amarim, it is a huge hit back to P16.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot harder to recover from, but Lyon is only 2 seconds off the lead. So yeah, he did a phenomenal job keeping this from becoming a worse situation, but he's still plugged up behind Braun here in the 258. See if he can make something happen down the Parabolica, as this is a common place to pull a slipstream. And he's got a nice little toe here as they look for the braking into the Spitzker. He could try something if he really wanted to be aggressive, but it looks like not this time.
Now, with that mistake, you'd probably rather just stay clean, Joe, and not necessarily risk a chance at hitting him into the splits curve, which is such a very tight corner, and you can easily make contact if somebody either overcooks it or somebody tries to be the hero on the inside or outside. It looks like Lion is playing it smart, holding his own. He knows he's faster than Braun. It's just a matter of finding the right place to get around him. Here's a look back at the Northeast Region driver, Nick Melorano, who after starting in 14th is almost in the same place, now to 13th and looking for 12th. A nice run out of the Mercedes end of the course, and now looking for the Mobil 1 curve, and possibly could have a pass here for P12.
Certainly making sure that Gregorado's feeling that pressure. Behind them, though, that's Leif Peterson, who we know is very fast. Will he play a part in this battle, or will he just pass them both and leave them in the dust very quickly as we watch from on board Enrico looking backwards? You can see Melorano just kind of staying with it, but now that black car just behind him, that is Peterson as they come into turn 1. Maybe could see something down into 2 into the parabolic entry. Let's watch and see who gets the exit.
And Peterson is really fast, Joe. Last lap, he set a 138.85. Melorano and Gregorado weren't even close to 138 territory. They were at 139, 4 and 6s respectively. So Peterson, I mean, he had that contact with Lion in turn 1, couldn't even show his skill up until now. So as he's working through the field is when he's starting to get faster. And as the fuel burns off, I mean, those lap times are probably going to continue to shrink. And Peterson is really putting that pressure on Melorano and company. We'll look further up ahead. And Chris Pais, I talked about him in that championship fight with Jesse Lyon and Rafael Amorim. Well, Amorim's now further back with that contact. He's got Jesse Lyon right in front of him, so might as well take advantage.
Indeed, Sang and Lyon still looking very good right here. But you can't count out the others as he gets very close to the rear end of Chris Braun for a brief moment, but Lyon can't seem to do anything with it quite yet as they are being watched. Oh, and here's Rafael Amorim back in 16th. First one on his plate, that's Paddy Patterson. Can't make the move in a Mobil 1, just too narrow into that turn. What about down into the Sachs curve? He thinks about it, but can't get in there.
You got to think now, though, your race has changed in the wildest way possible, Joe. In the handful of minutes that we've had here only at Hockenheim ring, rather, 6-7 laps further in. I mean, now if you're Amorim, is there a way you have to alternate your strategy, or is it just to be aggressive and just keep knocking position off their position and just hoping it sticks?
You know, if I'm honest, I almost wonder if it'd be worth for him to try and pit a little early. We're way too early at this stage. He needs a few more minutes before he can come in. But if he can get some clear track, he could try and run his own pace and not have to worry as much about overtaking other cars. We'll see if that's what he does or not. But right now, he's got to just stay patient and try and keep it as quickly as he can, even amongst the traffic, though. I think Paddy Patterson may have just said, had waved him by, because he got on the radio and said something to him and is staying off the racing line. So I think he's going to let him go as we watch Ryan Cowley a little farther ahead, head into the Mercedes arena.
Has a nice look of Chris Pais, Jesse Lyon, and Chris Braun right in front of him. And this is what I expected more of when we looked at the times in practice and qualifying. The leader only ahead by the second car by less than a second or so. I probably was looking at maybe half a second, but it has stayed at around 0.7 of a second, and they've been miraculously close to each other, and they're not pulling away from third on back either. They are staying within range, so this competition rather equal, and now it's more of a question of how Lyon and Pais can get around the drivers up in front of them, because they're some of the fastest cars on the racetrack. It's more so their plan of attack, and they really haven't done so all that much, at least in the first 7 laps. So we'll see, but everyone really, really close. And now Lyon really catching up to Braun heading into turn 1. So we'll see if he's got something for him heading into the Nord Curve and the Einfahrt Parabolica.
Yep, he's got a nice little run here. He could try and attack on Braun if he wants to, but maybe it's better to wait until after the corner. He's tucked right up underneath that rear wing. Decent-ish exit by Jesse Lyon. And this might be the better chance. Here he goes, picking up speed as they fly down the Parabolica up to 150 miles an hour already before they're even to the braking zone, 160. And finally, he gets on the binders. That time, he took a big look at that third place, but still doesn't feel confident.
That was almost a semi-plunge down into the splits curve where Lyon just was testing Braun's reaction time and what he was going to do if he had dived it to the bottom, but just backed out at the right time. and just said, I don't have enough momentum to go in, but I'm just going to tell you what I might be able to do if I catch up to you in just a little bit. You can see just how windy this section of the track is, and that's the Mercedes part of the track heading for a Mobile 1 curve, and then the Sachs curve right after that. And this part of the track, Joe, is very different from that first sector. I mean, you look at a lot of tight corners, from Parabolic, which is long straight, into Splits curve, which is super tight. Einfort Parabolica is super tight as well. Nord curve narrows down, and then this part of the track is all about keeping momentum. There's a really slow part of the track at Sachs curve, but it really can open up right around here. You really got to carry that momentum out of the final corner, and it looks like Lion has done just that. As it looks like we've got a replay. Rick Reinsberg with an issue. He's fallen back to 18th, and we'll see what happened.
Yeah, he's in pit lane. He had to take a tow, unfortunately. And, the car got loose, and when it spat him back to the left-hand side, it was straight into the concrete. No wonder he couldn't drive that thing back around to pit lane. He's going to need that spare car that they have waiting in there. But still, nope, he has disconnected. Pardon me, he is actually going to be our first DNF instead, so he's not willing to carry on.
Well, that's so unfortunate for Reinsberg, but again, it shows you just how twitchy these GT3R cars are and how easy they are to being unsettled. You grab a bit of the grass, you might end up in a spin. You grab a bit of the curbing, which is pretty nasty here at Hockenheim Ring, you can also end up in a spin, and if you overcorrect the car, you can easily put it into a wall. We saw the GT3R and its harshness at Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps, where out of one of the corners, such a fast left-hander, that car got so loose, and we saw many hit the inside wall as a result because they just could not control the car after. So unfortunate for Reinsberg, and as our first DNF, that's really going to hurt him going into the next race, and hopefully we see him the next time we come out in the pro class as we watch Jesse Lyons still putting that pressure on Braun, but again, he's just not struck yet. I think he's waiting for the 258 to make a mistake.
I'm kind of surprised because he was very close down the Parabolica this time and yet still did not try to pounce. So yeah, Lyon has something up his sleeve, that or he just maybe was a little bit shaken by his own mistake earlier and is trying to keep this together. We do have to remember there are incident limits. Now, I highly doubt he's at a point where he's in danger with that, but last night we did get a couple cars that were given black flags because they racked up too many incidents.
That's true. You really have to be careful, and with this track, with its asphalt runoff, it can be really easy to go off track and then get those 1Xs little by little by little, and it can really rack up as Leif Peterson exits off of the curve, off of the Nord curve, and that could also be a one-off off-track incident if you go a little bit too far. And I did get news. I did find out, Joe, that Rafael Amarima, the driver who started up in the front and was leading this race, got into an incident off of Einfort Parabolica, caught the curb, got loose, got into the guardrail, and is now on pit road, one lap down. This is what happened as he was trying to catch up to Melorano.
Oh, does he get a little loose here? Yeah, that car was getting out of sorts and unfortunately could not collect it. Into the wall he goes. So from pole sitter to now potentially second to last at best in finishing this one. I said the drivers could fall on their face despite having an open door to the championship lead, and Amorim, unfortunately, is going to be one of those who's got mud in his eyes. That's
going to be a dear brunt that he's going to have to face at Watkins Glen. And that's going to be the opportunity here for Jesse Lyon and Chris Pais to, again, take control of that piece of the championship where they're still trying to catch up to Wyatt Gooden and Trey Drawhorn, but as they've been missing races, it's only closed in that gap further and further, so that is so tough for Amorim. And again, talk about the curbing here at Hockenheim Ring. He really unsettled this GT3R. It happened right there with Amorim. It just made that slight mistake, and then he caught the grass. It's sort of a double whammy, puts him into the wall as Jesse Lyon gets loose out of turn one Nord curve, and that fight to Chris Braun all but stifled at this point.
And this is going to make it extra interesting because, yes, Justin Sang is looking at potentially catching up here in the points, but he was a little bit farther down. He was down in 6th, and it would put him close to, if slightly ahead of Gooden, I believe, if he takes this win. And it's not going to absolutely shoot him far ahead of everybody. And Jesse Lyon is still back there, although I think he just had to give up a spot to Chris Pais. For some reason, he let him go. And I'm not sure what that was about. That's interesting. So Lyon now down to 5th position. So Lyon's not going to get a whole lot of points either. And this is all kind of being turned on its head this round. The way it's shaping up right now, it could still have a few more twists in the tail. We'll keep our eyes out as we're watching Jonathan Waltman now in P9 chasing Nick Facciolo and getting very close to the rear of the car.
Hey, you're right. This championship could be absolutely blown wide open. And watching this 4-car train, I think what happened with Jesse Line there might have been a slowdown that he had to give up time and then just gave that position away on a straightaway where he knew that it wouldn't be risky to give it up. But you're watching this grouping here, and Jonathan Waltman, Nick Facciolo, and Rich Minkler, who came home in the 13th place position the last time we were out in the pro class at Interlagos, and Minkler running quite well inside the top 10. So this is a nice recovery after the race a couple of weeks ago, as here's Justin saying, and that gap that he has maintained, Joe, at 0.7 of a second. I'm surprised it hasn't opened nor closed. It's been the same. I guess these two have just been mirror images of each other every single lap tonight.
Absolutely. I'm kind of with you. I thought that maybe it would start to develop one way or the other, but Briggs has not been able to close it in. At the same time, Justin hasn't been able to run away. And I think we had another problem for Derek Cyphers at some point. We'll try and check on that in a little bit in the 95. But he does get the car rolling. But I saw him stopped on track for a brief moment, so something must have gone down. By the way, kudos to Leif Peterson, who's already up to 11th. And I think this is what happened to Cyphers here in the number 95, down to the north curve once again. And it did look like he caught a little bit of that grass on entry.
Yeah, he did. And then that car gets sideways. There's not much you could do about it. That's probably, though, Joe, the best place here at this Hockenheim Marine track to go sideways, because look at the amount of runoff that's on the left side. And boy, that was almost a hit there. That was Jacob Schum, I think, that almost got into him. He took the high road there, getting around Cyphers. This is from Schum's perspective, the Carolinas region driver. He'll see that 95 goes sideways. He goes around right about there. Oh man, that is so close.
That's one of the cases where the drivers are actually glad that they have paved runoff to the outside, and that allows him to keep going. He's up to 11th. Peterson just ahead of him. He actually must have just made that pass and moves himself into the top 10 now. But unfortunately for Leif, he's still 12 seconds behind the leader. That's going to be a huge gap to try and make up and try to go for the win. But he qualified third, so we know Leif has the one-lap pace. Question is, can he make up for that opening incident where he just unfortunately was sent off spinning there in lap 1, turn 1. Continue to watch Schum here behind him, staying at least within 0.8 of a second. Let's check up ahead, though, as we watch the battle here between Rich Minkler and Nick Facciolo. Looks like these two starting to pull away from Jonathan Waltman, who we saw right up behind them earlier. So now Nick has gone from defense to attack. Is he going to do anything into the hairpin?
We'll see if he's got the draft, but Minkler is playing some defense. He'll hop on the brakes a little later, going for the outside here in Splits Curve. I think he might look for the crossover here, but he's got good momentum, and he's going to take him to the outside.
It's got a little bit of an overlap here in the Mercedes, if he can hold on to that. And no, he cannot. Minkler, though, doesn't defend on him. He leaves the door open. At the same time, Nick does not try and attack. So they're going to stay in order with Minkler in 7th, Facciolo 8th, and Waltman in 9th. So as they come down towards the stadium section, the battle rages on.
And as Facciolo gets closer to Minkler, I mean, that's only going to bring in Jonathan Waltman further. I mean, if they go side by side, going to be a lot of lost time on behalf of Facciolo and Minkler. And it looks like Minkler got a little bit loose going into the Sachs curve, and that almost allowed Facciolo to get to the inside. We know Facciolo is faster at this stage and way better than Minkler in certain corners, but again, just has not been able to complete that pass. And boy, that was so close to the gravel. You're flirting with danger there, getting off of that final corner. Can Facciolo do anything for turn 1? Pretty decent exit, but I think Minkler is going to hold things off for now. So a good defensive effort here by the 5 car.
Both of them taking it as far out as they dare. You can get an incident point for going too far there on the exit of the north curve, so you got to watch out. If you do it too many times, you're going to find yourself with an extra visit down pit lane due to the rules that they've set up for this one. Waltman giving watch, just trying to show himself off the right-hand side a little bit. Both of them weaving down into the Spitzkara, and neither willing to try and make the move, although they get backed up, and there is contact between Nick and Jonathan.
And they make a bit of contact, and guess who this is bringing in, Joe Peak? Leif Peterson. That 9:13 was back about 3.8 seconds, I'd say about a lap ago, and now he is within 1.5 seconds of this trio, starting from 7th on the racetrack. That is to tell you just how fast Leif Peterson is. He is almost a full 2 seconds faster than this trio right in front of him. There's that 9:13, and boy, he is currently running like a maverick right now. Peterson on fire at this stage and really closing in on these guys.
Yeah, doing a fantastic job on this recovery. Could have 3 more for the Pickens here pretty quickly. And we're almost at the halfway point of this race. He's passed at least, let's see, I think he was down at 6. No, he was dead last actually after the start of it. So he's passed at least 7 cars here to get up to this spot. 7 more would at least put him into 3rd and give him a podium by the end, back where he started this race. So that about tracks for him. But first, he's got to get by these drivers, at least. I'm kind of surprised he also isn't one that's decided to try and go for the early pit stop, so he has fewer cars to pass. Now, I've been watching Chris Braun here. That gap has come down significantly, and it's down to 0.3 of a second right now. Briggs, I think, has actually lost time to Sang, as it's up to about a second between them. So it has suddenly been flipped on its head, and Briggs is no longer worried about the win so much as just trying to stay on the podium.
Yeah, Briggs has really fallen off over the last couple of laps, and it's a phenomenon as a driver where you see the one in front of you, you have that target to chase after, and in some cases subconsciously you can end up burning off your car more than you would like just because you're trying to keep pace with the driver in front of you. And I feel like that's exactly what happened to Briggs, where he wanted to stay within striking distance of Sang, and he kept it close at around 0.7 of a second. It didn't move all too much lap by lap, but now as the tires are starting to hit that cliff period, he's starting to fall back, trying to pressure himself to stay with the leader, and in turn it's bringing in this handful of cars with Chris Braun, Chris Price, and Jesse Lyon, give or take, in the group all the way back to 5th.
By the way, Waltman did get the spot away from Facciolo. Did a nice job just outgunning him out of the Mercedes arena and got that pass done. And Leif Peterson appreciated it because now he is right at the back of them as well. So once again, things changing around in a hurry. We're going to take a look at this pass, and this was not something you see as often here, Kenny, but just better acceleration out of this portion.
And you can really get a lot of momentum. That, though, is a place where you can't really make a pass often, and not many drivers do that, but that was a beautiful setup going into the Mobile 1 curve, and Facciolo just took the outside, lost a bit of that ground, and Waltman took that pass away. So pretty aggressive, but had it in the right place at the right time. With the way his car was running, Facciolo at that point just had to give way. As you were right, Joe Peak, they really are closing in at around 2nd on back. It's only a matter of time before either that 258 makes a move or before that 4 starts to fall off the pack, as Peterson is closed in on the rear bumper of Facciolo's Porsche GT3R and heading for the Mercedes arena. He's got a lot of momentum.
Yep, this is a good spot to try and get a pass done usually, but doesn't look like it's on the cards, at least this time. He needs a little bit more side-by-side battling like you saw not long ago. We do know these GT3R cars do struggle with a little bit of the aero wake. I wonder if that's kind of making things a bit difficult once he does reach these groups.
And maybe that's also why we've just seen drivers struggle to pass overall. I mean, Jesse Lyon, remember him stuck behind Chris Braun, where it looked like so many times he would get by him and he did not. Maybe that's also just a case of that with the way the aerodynamics are built. It can be really tough, and especially through this sector of Hockenheim Ring where it's so narrow and so windy, pretty slow through most of them. I mean, you really have to keep an eye out for how your car is handling in that aero wake. It's really just about the draft and getting the momentum off of corners like turn 1 to take advantage of everybody around you. Is a nice exit for Peterson and a nice one for Chris Braun as well. I was noticing it entering the Einfahrt Parabolica, and now here comes the 258.
He's got a good opportunity as he finally take it. Briggs is going to defend. No, Briggs is slowing. And Briggs gives it up. I am almost certain he did not have a slowdown penalty there. And he might lose another one because Pies is going to look for it, but has to back out in a big way. He did not want to turn that bright yellow machine.
And he did not. Courteous move, though, by Briggs. He understood that Braun was faster and said, hey, I'll let you by. I won't give you the trouble of fighting me for this position. I'll just let you have it, and I'll just handle my race from there. We are approaching halfway in this race, so I think these drivers are already starting to look onwards to the strategy portion of this race. Briggs is probably looking at that already and knowing how far he's fallen off the pace. And now as Chris Bryce enters into the Mobile 1 curve with a chance at this pass for P4, it might just get a little closer to queue time for Briggs to come in.
Yeah, and that's what I'm a bit surprised about. Some of these drivers that are a little stuck haven't tried to make a dive for pit lane. Granted, it is still a little early. Also, it's talking about pit lane, sadly, we've lost Rafael Amorim. He has officially retired from this race now. So 2 DNFs as we go side by side down the front stretch into turn 1. And Pies is going to be able to go by Thomas Briggs. So 2 positions in 1 lap for the number 4 car. Pies now onto the podium.
And that 14 did a nice job of getting around and had such a fantastic exit out of the Sud curve and turn number 16 on this layout here at Hockenheim Ring. And Briggs is now going to fall to the mercy of the top 5. Now here's the driver in. And how about it, Joe? Leif Peterson, who had been playing catch-up all race long after the contact of turn 1, well, he's going to the feeding zone this early, lap 18, halfway.
Yep, for once I finally called strategy right, I think. Leif Peterson going to try and get himself away of everybody else if he knows he's losing time behind the other cars. And let me look at his lap times here. Yeah, his pace backed off a bit once he caught up to cars on various laps during his race here. So clearly this was the right call. Put himself in clear air, run as fast as you can, and see where it puts you at the end of it. Justin Sang, though, opposite strategy. He wants to stay out as long as possible and see how far he can stretch it before this thing is empty, not to be put back into the traffic there. He needs the clear air while he's got it up at the front.
And he does, that's true. And with the gap that he's built up at around 2.2 seconds on Chris Braun, I'd figure that this route to the lane and for service is going to be a little easier. It's not going to be as arduous. It's not going to be as pressure filled. So that's good for the 188. And by the way, you talking about strategy, I feel you on that one. I am almost completely off on strategy. Like every single time I call a race, I can say, hey, they might come down pit road here and they come down like maybe 25,000 laps later. I don't know. But yeah, it was a good decision there by Leif Peterson coming in early. Wants to severely undercut the field.
For some reason, watching tons of these races doesn't make us great strategists for some way or another. But meanwhile, another good run here off of the parabolic entry. This time it's Jesse Lyon. Briggs just kind of dropping backwards. Not sure if he's just trying to get himself a good finish or what here. Let's see if he gives it up again. He's kind of pulling off to the side. No, this time it almost looks like more of a defense. Leaves the door open as Lyon's going to stick his nose in. He's got to get a good run off the corner, though. Briggs going way off and eventually is back on. But now the pass has been made. Lyon's up to P4.
That was a threshold that Briggs probably did not want to have crossed. And here he's going to try and respond in the Mercedes arena. But it's a tight entry, that left-hander, and that orange curve you really don't want to hit because it could really launch your car up off the ground. Lyon, though, is going to pull away with the lack of momentum on that 4 car. Briggs continues on this downward spiral. The good thing, though, is that he's about 1.5 seconds away from the next car in running order. That is Ryan Cowley, as we look back at Nick Facciolo, who, by the way, is still in contention with this grouping that's led by 7th place Rich Minkler. It feels like all 3 of them have been on the same pace all race long, and boy, it's going to be interesting to see if they split on strategy or whether they come in all in synchronizing motion, because they have been virtually the same all night long. And there's Waltzman trying to catch up to Minkler.
Facciolo is going to make the call. Yeah, so this is actually bad news for Leif Peterson because he is trying to race these guys from across the track since he made the early call. Now that Facciolo's coming in, there's going to be less difference for Peterson to necessarily get ahead, and we don't have a full lap from him, so we don't know what his pace looks like now that he's been freed up. Nick is taking his service, and if he comes out ahead of Peterson, that's basically going to wreck the undercut for the 913.
It's really going to be close because Facciolo is merely right there to pit road exit, and Peterson is now just getting around to the start-finish line. So they're going to be almost even by the time they get to the North Curve turn 1. It looks like Peterson will win that battle. And by the way, for that 9:13, that was his out lap. Now that he just crossed the line, 1:38.955. So he's still getting himself wound up on the service that he just took about a lap or two ago. So now up in the 15th, and Facciolo will take 16th. And now we're just going to play the waiting game, Joe, to see if anyone else comes in. Most notably, these two in 7th and 8th. Waltman really starting to catch up to the 5 car. Could that pressure either of them to come down for service?
Well, if they've been watching, it could be the right time to come in, at least for Waltman. Minkler, though, probably wants to try and stay out. It just depends on if he can keep the pace up here. To try and not allow them that undercut to work. It's usually a bit of a toss-up if those behind you have pace and you've been holding up a train. Sometimes it's worth coming in. He's not going to follow, but this has now been basically 3 laps in a row that we've seen drivers in this train slowly, one by one, at the tail end of it, pitting in to try and respond to those that are fighting with them.
Yeah, and it's a testament again to how tough it's been to pass. Jesse Lyon has just come down to the pit lane, but he overshot his box. He had to hit reverse, and that cost him a lot of time. We'll see if that ends up losing him some position, with Waltman right behind him, who's also in the lane. I believe Lyon continues to struggle with getting service on his Porsche 911. His battle for second heats up. Chris Pais to the inside of Braun, and his splits Kerr almost looked for it for at least a split second, but backed out.
Tried for the over-under there, but it didn't quite work out. He certainly looks faster than Thomas Briggs, than Chris Braun, who has been trying to hold on to this second spot. Now that he's gotten it, does not want to let this go. Both these drivers, by the way, are up 3 positions from where they started. And remember, we were talking about Briggs giving away spots. He's also still up 3 despite those that he has lost. So maybe that is partly why he's not as worried about giving these spots away. He's kind of overperforming as it is and just wants to bring home a good result.
Yeah, that's true. He really does want to be consistent. And as we're getting into the final couple of races in Series 10, especially for this pro class, which has been really competitive at the top of the point standings, you want to be as good as you can be every single race out. You want to rack up these good, consistent finishes because it's going to pay off at the end. We're now going into the penultimate race in a couple of weeks at Watkins Glen, and then the finale at Sebring on June 22nd. So you're looking at this season starting to wind down. You need to take advantage of every opportunity you have, as second and third continue to be nose to tail. And they have stagnated at around 2 seconds back to Justin Sang. And I believe there's another driver on pit road. Yes, indeed, that is Rich Minkler. So finally, out of that trio, Minkler completes that group to come in.
I'm going to make a prediction, though, that he is going to come out behind Peterson, because both Facciolo and Waltman have fallen behind that 913. So it seems like his undercut is actually working beautifully. Still no change for that second position. And indeed, Peterson is going to be ahead, and Minkler is actually going to be behind all 3 of them. So Minkler lost out horribly in that exchange. He lost 3 positions.
Yeah, it was a tough call, and for those two to come in as early as they did, you'd figure that Minkler would come in sooner, given the cue that they had in his rearview mirror. But Minkler was trying to hit a sweet spot, and it feels like it's starting to unravel in front of him in the worst way possible. There's Enrico Gregorado, the 771, coming out of the pit lane. So we'll see where he stands in all of this, and we're still waiting to see whether the overcut will work in some cases for the leaders who are so far ahead. As here comes Justin Sang, your leader has decided to pull off to the right for the pit road access lane. He's coming in second and third. Braun and Pais are not deciding to go in this time, so they're going to go out an extra lap, and Braun will take the lead.
This is an interesting call from Sang. Not sure why he's pitting earlier than the others. Looks like Jacob Schum is also going to pit in, so maybe this is pretty close to the end of the pit window for these guys. Just seems a little earlier than what we saw last night if they're going all the way to the dead end of that fuel tank. So Braun inherits the lead. Pai's now in second, but they're probably going to have to hand that back unless something goes horribly wrong for Justin, who is coming back out, and he is a little bit in traffic. He's going to be behind Melorano.
Yeah, that's going to be tough. And when we see the drivers in front of him come down for service, it's ultimately going to be a matter of time of whether he's going to be stuck in traffic there as well. And you're right, Joe. I'm also surprised that the leader saying didn't just go all the way until the tank ran dry and just go for the excessive overcut. It looks like he just wanted to be at the right place there, just run it long enough to where he's running out of fuel, but not enough to where he would have to worry about running out of fuel in that last lap or so before he had to come in. So now with Braun and Price, I'm wondering how they're going to siphon out in all of this. Are they going to be around the end of the top 5? Are they going to be within the podium? How close are they going to be to Sang? And how far up ahead or behind are they going to be behind that 188 car now that he came in early?
Well, I say if you're Braun, stay out. If you're Chris Pines, pit in. Nothing really to lose other than just sitting behind this orange 258, but he's not going to come in this time. He's going to stay out, but it does look like Briggs, yes, both Briggs and Cowley are pitting in, and boy, are they pushing it right up to the edge. You got to try and get to the limits of this pit entry to maximize it.
Hey, dude, that's the wonderful thing about a lot of these road courses is that the pit lane really doesn't start at the limiter until further down in that pit lane access road. It kind of reminds me of the uphill section at Road America on the front straightaway where you have to take that access road on the right side. You're still with a head of steam, but then you have to hop on the brakes as late as you can to make it to pit road speed limit. It is absolutely cool to watch, and we did get word from our producer Ryan Bauer, Joe, that Cowley just overcooked it there going into the pit lane. He sped, and he's going to pay the price. Thomas Briggs is already out in front of him, and that number 17 car will have to pay the price.
Yeah, and that's one of those things about trying to attack those cones. You got to try and make sure you get down to your limiter in time to the speed limit. Now, Sang has already overtaken Melorano, so he's had to make some passes here. Don't have a full lap for him yet to really know what his pace will be, but we'll keep an eye on it. And he is ahead of Jesse Lyon, so that's important there because Lyon is the only marker near him that we've seen that gives us an idea. Briggs is back out, but I think we said that he missed his pit stall, didn't he?
Yeah, Lyon had overshot by just a couple of feet.
Oh, that was Lyon. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Lyon had overshot. He lost a bit of time, and he's dropped to 7. So he's kind of in no man's land in some case. And then you watch your 2 leaders still here, who, by the way, I mean, they are still deciding to stay out. I'm really surprised that they're just taking this overcut. And I guess they know they're super far ahead of Patty Patterson at around 22 seconds, so I'm not sure maybe why.
Well, like I said, for Braun, I mean, he has no reason to come in right now. He's in clear air, and he might as well try and push it to the end of it. Derek Cyphers still needs to make a pit stop, but the driver he's behind, Patty Patterson, is going to pit, and that was a battle for position. Behind him is Justin Sang. Now, that could be a part of the call here, potentially, for some of these drivers. If they see the leader coming up, why also lose time fighting them? Because they're not in a battle. They're just near each other due to strategy, as Pies is going to give a big look and tried almost twice to try and get down to the inside. It took until the exit of the corner to finally get the overlap, but he just doesn't have the grip. He's still sitting behind Chris Braun.
He tried to kick in the door like Notorious B.I.G., and somehow it did not work in his splits car. I thought he was going to be there at the inside, heading into the Mercedes arena. But now, I guess, with the pressure here, does that force that 258 to come in? They're going to get to the last sector here, starting at Mobile 1 curve, and Brown has pulled away just a little bit. And Pies is really going to have to strategize his way around this car in front and just hope that as many laps as they're staying out, they are not losing more time to Justin Sang than they would like, because if you stay out a little too much, Joe Peak, Sang is going to catch up, and he'll have a substantial gap by the time that you come out of pit road. So it's really going to be an interesting scenario. Here pulls off Braun. He's going to look to the right side. He'll come in, but Pies is going to stay out.
Yeah, this gives you a much better idea of just how far these cars can go. I'm anticipating at least a couple more laps if Pies is trying to take it to the very end of the fuel tank. Cyphers and Melorano are now the only ones left that still need to make pit stops for service and make that only Melorano, because Cyphers is now coming in. And looks like the Bostonian, I'm going to take a wild stab that he's a Bostonian, is going to get his service.
And there's Melorano. I can't state enough, Joe, how much I love the Dunkin' Donuts the apparel and the car. I love the combination. That's pure Duncan drip. I'm just gonna say all that much. As Cyphers is coming too, and then now you look at Chris Pice. Look at a staggering 23.8 seconds ahead of Sang, who should take over the lead. And if you're making a Boston reference show, I think I'm just gonna fold. I'm gonna be in shambles because the Heat are losing right now to the Celtics. So it's tough. It's tough out here.
I was going to make a reference to the fact that we know America runs on Duncan, but I'm not sure if Germany does. So we'll see how far ahead that does get him. Now, Pies, the last car running that still needs a pit stop here with 17 minutes left on the clock. Sang, like you said, about 23 seconds behind. We do anticipate that Sang should come out ahead based on the timing between those two. Let's see, does he pit this time? Yes, he maximizes that entry as much as he can without wrecking the car as he brings it down to the cones. Justin Sang now starts to catch up. We should see him re-inherit the lead.
Yeah, that's true. And by the way, when Sang went out for his out lap, he put in a 138.5. So it was around a 141 before he came in, then a 204 the lap that he went for service, and then set a blistering time here at Hockenheim Ring, and he backed it up again with a 138.9, and this time with a 138.7. So it is really starting to favor that 188 car, and he is only gaining pace as he's moving forward. He takes the lead away. Heisto is not that far behind, although he's going to be with Chris Braun, battle for second.
Yeah, I was going to say it was right next to each other as they came out, and unfortunately for Pies, his attempts to try and overcut him did not work. They're exactly back where they were before the pit stops. In the meantime, Jacob Schum now on screen. This is a battle with Waltman for the 8th position. And unfortunately for Jesse Lyon, not only his early slip up, but his problem in pit lane, I think, put paid to this race because he's 4.7 seconds behind the leader, and his fastest lap is, I think, 0.3 of a second faster than the nearest other car. Jesse Lyon was flying. He just could not back it up with consistency, but Schum is going to try and fly past the 7. No, he's going to fly into him. They come together slightly. It looks like they'll get away with it, though.
Oh, that was close in his splits curve, and out here comes Waltman with a response. I think Schum was just letting him by. I knew that he made the contact and said, hey, that was not a fair way to pass you. I'm going to try again. I'll let you have that position. A courteous effort here. Look at Lee Peterson starting to catch up, and I was concerned for a moment, Joe, that the 913 would not have a chance at both Waltman and Minkler, where he was around them before he came in. It looks like all's well that ends well. I guess it took me a little bit to say that, but Peterson bringing in Cyphers into the mix, and I guess with Schum and Waltman in front, could be a nice quartet.
Now, I thought he came out ahead of Waltman and Minkler, wasn't he? Did something happen in this lap? Am I remembering completely wrong? I thought he was trying to, that he had rocked up to the back of them and then passed them in the pit stops here. And I do see lap 23, he had an issue. Something happened there, I think, and I'm trying to find it now.
Yeah, it was one of his slowest laps, too, at a 151.7, which is very odd if you're Leif Peterson, who had been setting 138s, low 138s, or low 139s, rather, high 138s. Oh, that's what happened. He got loose and caught the grass. It wasn't a full-on spin, but that's the reason so much of his lap time was chopped off.
Wow, that is gutting. He had done such a magnificent job recovering up until then. And here it is, off into the runoff. Thankfully, avoids the wall there jutting out. This is actually usually the rallycross course that he's on currently, and eventually finds his way back onto the track. But he's already working on Jacob Schum right now. Schum's not going to fight it. Schum's going to give up 2 positions because Cyphers follows him through as we're watching the battle between Braun and Pies.
And did not want to fight that 913 nor the 95 going into Mercedes Arena, which is a tight corner in itself. And Pies is going to work on Braun here that last time, but I believe this is going to be his first outlap since coming in. So we'll get a gauge on where his pace is in comparison to both the 258 and your leader in the 188. He'll cross the line, and that is substantially fast. That's his fastest lap of the race, Joe Pico, 137.9.
the first driver to break. No, I take that back. Amarim managed to get a sub 38 lap early in the race before he wrecked out. But the only driver still running right now to break into the 37. So Chris Pies, you're right, incredibly fast, but he hasn't been able to take it anywhere. He's been plugged up behind Braun.
And he's going to lose more time here to Sang if he tries to fight that 258. And time is going to run out in this race as here comes Leif Peterson, challenge for P8. Into the Parabolica section. It looks like he's got it. Waltzman also under fire by this 95 car. How about Derek Cyphers? We didn't see him all too much in the early jump of tonight's race after starting in P9, and this has been a nice comeback for Cyphers. He's looking to the bottom. He'll try to get in it towards Splitsker. He'll have the opportunity, maybe a 2-for-1 on Peterson.
I don't think he was trying to go for that, but was just looking to avoid running into the side of Peterson, who's now going to run wheel to wheel with him down into the Mercedes arena, and he's on the wrong side unless he can really hold on. Nice exit there through the kink. That keeps him the inside. He's going to get back ahead. That stops them all up as they almost make contact once again, but a cutback there from Cyphers, and he might actually be able to pull the over-under. He gets to the inside, and now they head to the stadium section.
Cypher's got some handles. He's been crossing over left, right. This time he backs out behind that 913, but might have a chance to go to the inside. He looks for it, and he might just pressure Peterson into a mistake. This race has been all about mistakes, Joe Peak. Talk about the fastest drivers in our race having problems early. Line with a spin. You saw Amarin with a spin himself, and then getting into the inside wall off of the on-four Parabolica. So many mistakes have cost drivers position and time. And if Cyphers can put Peterson in that predicament, it could help him launch up the P8. But back into turn one, so far, no response. He'll stick behind Peterson for now.
Yeah, still, like you said, I think that 95 looks like he is a bit of a threat. So is Jacob Schum, trying to look down the inside of Minkler. Minkler doesn't fight it, or excuse me, Waltman rather. Waltman does not fight it, and he's going to let Jacob Schum into 10th. Facciolo. We haven't watched this race in a while. Him versus Thomas Briggs for 5th position. Once again, the cutback there at the hairpin has been a strategy many have tried, but few have found success with tonight.
It's been a lot of anticipation with the driver and where they're going to overshoot so you can make that crossover, but the corner is so slow it can be really hard to gain that much momentum to get on the inside. But Facciolo is definitely faster, and faster by a decent amount. That last time by Facciolo at a 139.5, and Briggs sort of trapped at around the 140 area in lap time. Briggs has been trying to damage control for most of the second half of this race, and Briggs is just going to hope that he can hold on to it. Facciolo has done a really nice job of staying with him.
Indeed, and we're stepping back here because Cyphers took a look into Sachs curve, which is surprisingly hard to try and make a pass into there. It just doesn't seem to offer up much with it being so narrow and with it being banked. And boy, is he putting the pressure on. This is not what I expected. Leif Peterson, with his incredible speed, has basically kind of met his match here at these dying laps of the race.
Yeah, you wouldn't expect him to be in this scenario, especially with this 95 car, who hasn't been outlandish the entire race, but has been relatively quick. It seems now they're both starting to even out, and Cyphers has really taken the advantage in this stint after the pit stop. And Cyphers, remember, he had gone around at the exit of turn one out of the Nord curve. He went sideways in the runoff and almost got hit by Jacob Schum, but lost so much track position, and what a recovery it's been to get back into the top 10. And we're going to see a stellar fight as there's more battles for position behind them. It looks like Paddy Patterson striking on the inside of Nick Melorano into Splitsker.
Can he get it off the corner, though? They're going to be wheel to wheel once again. This is what I love about this track. You start that pass, but it isn't always finished. And sometimes you got to complete it down to the Mercedes arena. Patterson pinched to the inside, can't keep his foot in the throttle. So the Dunkin' Donuts car is actually going to get turned, unfortunately. And it looks like Melorano is going to have to try and push his way back onto the track. I wonder if Patterson might get a penalty for that one.
Oh, that's a dent in the donut. Melorano getting spun around. And yeah, we're going to watch to see if race control has any decision on what happened there between Patterson and Melorano going into the corner. And we saw Patterson with the advantage on the inside. And you'll see it right about here, entering the curve, going into the Mercedes arena, catches a bit of the grass. It unsettles the car. That's what loses the momentum. But it's an attempt, I believe, at a crossover. Oh, it just goes wrong.
Yeah, I wondered if maybe Melorano started to lose it in front of him, but I'd say no, that car looked well in control. So Patterson does have that looming over his head now that he could be under investigation by the stewards. We'll see if that winds up the case. Braun versus Pies, though. These two glued to the hip for much of the race, and they got 7 minutes to try and settle this out. Unfortunately for them, it's a little more than a second behind Sang. So yes, Justin could make a mistake from here, but honestly, if these two start fighting, he is going to run away with them with a quickness.
Yeah, that's true, and you don't want to fight all too much of your Braun and Pies, because if you do look at the telemetry, both of them were faster than Justin Sang on the last lap. Braun with a 138.7, Pies with a 138.5, and Sang at a 138.9. So they are catching up. They just need to avoid going side by side and then losing time, because at that point, they're just losing the race by their own doing, and they are really catching up, especially at a turn 16. That gap at around 1.2 seconds.
Sang's pace, yeah, not as quick as these two, and yet he qualified on the front row as there goes Braun, and that solves the problem for Chris Pies in one fell swoop. Doesn't hit the wall. The orange and blue number 258 is going to trundle back on sheepishly in fourth.
And that's the first real mistake we've seen out of Braun, and what is it, Joe Peak? He caught the grass on the curbing, and that's the slightest mistake. You'd misjudge it by a millimeter, and this car goes around in an instant. This one mistake right there, those left side tires get the grass. It's almost like catching ice, and this car does not like it as a response. It goes around sideways. Fortunately, no damage, but I think the damage was done in track position, as here's Derek Cyphers inside on Leif Peterson.
Wow, Derek Cyphers is going to make the move. That'll promote him into 8th position. Peterson back down to 9th. It's been a rough race for the 913, but Leaf's not in the championship hunt on this one, so he's just out here for some pride. I'm sure he's going to fight this one all the way to the end, but he doesn't send it into the hairpin this time.
He doesn't, but like you said, you can attempt to pass in one corner and it won't be over until maybe the next handful. So if you're Leif Peterson, you want to be a little patient. You want to make sure that you minimize the amount of corners that you're battling this car for that P8 spot. You want to make sure you can at least do it in one corner or maybe two. There's a look off the rear bumper and the rear wing of Justin Sang's Porsche 911 GT3R. Man, Chris Pais is starting to catch up. 1 second flat. And that 14 is there, as here's Facciolo on the inside of Briggs.
Oh, we've been waiting for this one to erupt. They're going to be wheel to wheel through this very narrow, the thinnest part of the track. And as they come down to the south curve, Briggs just doesn't have the grip, unfortunately. Facciolo going to move to 5th, and now here comes Minkler. He thinks maybe he could get involved. Oh, big dive down to the inside. Very late there for Thomas Briggs, and that moves Minkler back to the outside, but he gets the cut back on him. He might be able to get this done down into the Parabolica entry.
And Briggs is trying to pinch as much as he can going into the Einfahrt Parabolica. And Minkler's got it. What a pass. And Briggs with a great battle so far that he's put up. I mean, that 4 has been playing, like I said, damage control. It's felt like all of this second half of the race. And then we look back up front. Pais has closed it down to half a second. So 4 minutes left, Joe Peak, and this race is not over.
Yeah, that last lap, Sang was at a 38.9, Pies was at a 38.4. It is looking much, much faster. But we've seen this story here, Kenny. We've seen drivers catch up to those ahead and be unable to try and make the move if they got caught up in that dirty air. Is that what he has to avoid? Does he need to be immediate on this?
No, he doesn't. He's got a little bit of time. He's got some laps, so he can be a little patient with this. And you really make sure that you are not falling too far into that aero wake from Sang's machine. And you're going to look for some clean air, especially on entry to some of those hard braking corners. And to Splits Kerr come to mind first. And in the Nordic curve, it's really hard to get out of the aero wake, so he'll brake a little bit early. He'll try to get the momentum. And mind you, both of these guys are running well within the championship. They are 5th and 6th. Pais has the upper hand with 977 points. A win can launch him over Amarim and maybe Jesse Lyon in one race ending. And so Pais has a lot riding on him, and Sang is just looking to build more points after finishing 2nd at Interlagos in race 5.
Here we go. Sang's been watching those mirrors this entire lap. He knows he's right there. He covers down to the inside, almost all the way down to the grass. And as they break, he's going to be shallow. Can he make the corner? Yes, just. Forces Pais a little bit wide there, but all's fair. And as they come off the corner, Sang still leads. Pais right on top of him.
He wanted that crossover badly, but Sang didn't really give him the space to do so to cross over. Pais almost darts it in the back bumper of Sang, and it shoots him outside of the Mercedes Arena corner, and they will be almost even heading into the Mobile 1 curve. Pais is there. It's just all about setting up this pass, which he almost had a couple of times.
Usually in my experience with sim racers, you don't often see a lot of emotion in the heat of the moment. They try to hold on to those and try and stay cool and collected, but I've been seeing a lot out of Justin Sang. He's been taking those heavy sighs, those big breaths, and wiping his brow at times. I think he's feeling the pressure.
And this is really the first time all race long, Joe, at least in this second half, that he has felt anyone close on the rear bumper. He was 7 tenths ahead of Chris Braun, Thomas Briggs and company that were kind of there, but not necessarily there close enough to get to him. You look at the shake of the head by Sang, did not like the entrance out of that corner. And here comes Pais, hard of the brakes. May he overshoot? He does not. Pais has the spot.
Oh, gets hit from behind as Sang wanted to try and carry his speed. Somehow, how in the world, honestly, did Chris get that car parked at the apex? And that's going to give him the lead as something's happened to Rich Minkler behind them. We'll check on that later. He was off the course. And this could be the white flag lap. They crossed right at 140 left.
Wow, that is unbelievable, and Pais absolutely sent it, but that's a pure testament to his confidence. He knew he was going to make that corner. As aggressive as he was, he knew he was not going to overshoot or locked up the brakes, and look at him now, 1.1 seconds ahead of Sang, who has yet to respond. And we'll see if we can look at this pass one more time, and boy, this is a thing of beauty. A setup out of turn 1, you saw on Sang's camera that he shook his head. He knew that exit was poor, and he would have Pais right on the rear bumper. Watch this attempt at the pass, and look how far he dives it in the brakes.
Again, I can't believe he made that apex, because he was almost a full second on his brakes after Sang there. I watched and waited to see when those lights would come on, and it was a long ways back. 10 seconds left. Is this going to be the checkers for Chris Pais, or does he need to go around one more time? It's gonna be close. 2-1-0. And it's not the end of it. He's got one more lap to go. Let's hope that he's got the fuel on the car for it. I wonder if that's what's happened to Sang. Is he shy?
Yeah, Sang has really dropped off the pace, and guess who has jumped in the top 3? Jesse Lyon in the 115 car. It's been a really quiet comeback as Chris Braun is coming down pit road, so maybe some fuel issues for the 258 who was running inside the top 5. And I reckon the scares are starting to hit the top 3 as Minkler was black flagged. That appears from the incident that he suffered with Thomas Briggs at around turn 15 about a lap ago. But yeah, watch to see if this 14 loses fuel or whether anyone else has problems from here on out.
Jesse Lyon back up into 3rd. Unbelievable job recovering after he just about lost the whole race there on the first couple laps. Meanwhile, Chris Pais 3 seconds ahead of Justin Sang, who is desperately trying to keep this car from running out of fuel. Jesse Lyon might have a P2 in his hands.
He'll try it into the Mobile 1 curve. He does have that chance when he's really closed in, and Sang fell off by a long shot. 141.419 in that last lap. Lyon at a 139.1. And here comes Lyon to dive onto the brakes into the corner. He's got it into Sachs curve for 2nd.
Wow. So Chris Pais has got the fuel right, he's got the speed, and he is going to wind up winning the race here at Hockenheim in the PCA series. Then behind him, Jesse Lyon recovering to second. Sang sputtering. He's got enough that he's going to be ahead of Facciolo, but he'll barely make it to it, and he'll take a podium.
Yeah, fuel ended up being a really big concern, and for Chris Braun, we saw him come down pit road, but he should be in the spot good enough to finish in fifth. How about Melorano on Jonathan Waltman, who fell pretty significantly in those last couple of laps, also set a 141.1, so may just also be in a fuel crunch. Here comes Melorano, the Dunkin' Donuts machine. Final chance in turn 16. He does not have a respectable race, and Jonathan Waltman takes the last spot in the top 10.
And I think that's it in terms of our battles left out on the track. We are going to see all 15 of those drivers that got to the checkered flag complete every one of the 37 laps on this one. But that's going to take us to a break. We'll come back with the unofficial results as well as driver interviews. So stick around. Break a little earlier if that's going to be the case. He's actually got a nose ahead as they come down into the braking zone. He's going to do it the hard way.
If you're a Porsche owner looking for reliable, convenient service without leaving the comfort of your home or office, look no further and take advantage of the Exchange at Home complimentary pickup and drop-off service exclusively at the Porsche Exchange in Highland Park. At the Porsche Exchange, it's all about creating a legendary ownership experience that embodies our guest lifestyle. Our Porsche service team utilizes cutting-edge technology that delivers a transparent service visit and keeps us in constant contact with our guests. And I can't think of anyone more qualified to work on your Porsche, new or classic, than our Porsche certified technicians. Whether you're a longtime guest or new to our dealership, I welcome you to experience legendary at the Porsche Exchange.
Welcome back to Hockenheim. We got a bit of a surprise on the results on this one. Chris Pies raced from 6th to the win and out-strategized his rivals, taking enough fuel and extending the race a lap to force a few others to have to slow down just to try and stretch the gas, as Jesse Lyon wound up in second, although could have been a win for him today if he hadn't have had his couple of slip-ups. And Justin Sang sputtered across the line after he could have fought for the win, just didn't put enough in, and that cost him. He wound up third at least. Nick Facciolo was fourth, climbing up from 11th. And in fact, I think, no, he is not a hard charger, though he's close. He's up 7 there, as Chris Braun was 5th, and Derek Cypher's great run up to 6th place, challenging names like Leif Peterson, who could not hold him back. Leif, unfortunately, did have a little bit of help for his reasoning to wind up in 7th as he got tipped around there at the start of the race. Jacob Schum, though, took the hard charger, up 9 positions from 17th to 8th. Patty Patterson was 9th, and Jonathan Waltman wound up 10th.
Nick Melorano comes home in 11th. He was in that battle with Waltman in that final lap, but just could not get around that 7 car. Ryan Cowley in the 17 car comes home in 12th after starting in 8th place. Thomas Briggs had such a good start, but things really went in the poor direction in that second half of the race. He fell back to 13th. That's where he will finish. Enrico Gregorato is 14th at the end of tonight's feature. Dale Green in the 250, who started dead last in 18th, works his way up to 15th and is the last car on the lead lap. Rich Minkler ended up in an incident and had a penalty via race control. He fell 2 laps down to 16th. Rafael Amorim ends up in 17th. We saw him with a big mistake that dropped him out of the lead, and they got into a crash all by his lonesome and dropped out of the race. And the same goes for Rick Reinsberg, who ended up in a crash and dropped 30 laps down in 18th.
Looks like we're going to be talking to our winner, Chris Pies, hearing what he thinks about that race. Chris, we eventually figured it out, but at what point did you realize that Sang may have short fueled it a little?
I was really surprised both him and Braun were able to come out with the same delta that we went into the pits with, because I was saving for fuel the entire first stint, and I had actually done really well, I thought. So I thought I was going to gain a couple of seconds on them in the pit stop alone, and then when I came out right in the same spot, I thought something was a little fishy. It turned out my inclination was right.
Now, were you aware of how tight it was there at the end for that extra lap, and were you intentionally pushing to try and make sure that we got the white flag late?
I was not quite aware. I knew I was going to make it to the good. I knew I had an extra lap of fuel in the car, so I was fine. But I just felt like I had pace, and if there was going to be a fuel issue or a tire issue, I had to push as hard as I could there at the end and really pressure Justin there at the end to either make a mistake or do something that wasn't in his strategy. And luckily it worked out. But he defended very, very hard. It made it difficult to get around him, but the pace advantage was just too much for him there at the end.
Without Wyatt or Trey here, and with Raphael slipping up, this honestly might launch you up into the points lead. With only 2 races to go, what's that send through your head?
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I'm kind of like that Energizer bunny that just keeps going, right? I think this is the first time I've talked to you guys from the first step of the podium this season. I tend to just hover around 4th, and I'm like a bad penny. I don't quite go away. So we'll see what happens and how it shakes down. It's a long season, but the points race, it's good news because I think I still have a drop race as well. So we'll keep pushing till the end and see where the chips lay.
Well, again, congratulations from 6th to 1st. Was mighty impressive, sir.
Thank you, Joe.
That was Chris Pies, your winner. And then up next, a man who just about saw it all fall away from him was Jesse Lyon, and Kenny's caught up with him.
Yes, indeed. An early mistake turns into a fantastic rebound at the end for you, Jesse. I mean, walk us through the fuel situation. We had some drivers struggle there to even make it through that last lap. What was your situation, and how confident were you to make it all the way to the end?
I didn't know we were going an extra lap until Pies took the lead. And so when I came into the pit stall, I overshot the pit stall and had to back up. I was going to try and pit early and try and get the fast times on the fresher tires, but I ended up having an extra lap of fuel, and I finished with 0.3 laps in the tank. So I didn't even think about it, but when Sang was like really slow, I figured he ran out of gas, and then someone told me that we went an extra lap when we were supposed to. So,
well, nonetheless, it works out in your favor. You had enough fuel to make it to the checkered flag. And give us a perspective of how it was like to come back in this race. I mean, you were running inside top 3 or 4 positions. You make a mistake going into Sachs curve. You go sideways. You lose a spot or 2. And then for the rest of the race, it felt like you've been trying to play catch up. What was it like to get back up to the field and then to strategize your way back to a podium?
Yeah, when Raph spun or lost it in the carousel, I ended up touching the grass when I hit the brakes, and then I slid right through traffic, and thank the heavens for not hitting Sang. And after that, I had to slow down and had to give up the place to Pies, and then I also missed a pit stall. So everything that went wrong, could go wrong, went wrong. And I was more than happy just to come away with 2nd after all that. I was happy with 3rd, but things just turned out. Braun spinning on his own was really unfortunate shame, and the net code with Leaf was also really disappointing because I thought for sure I was going to get a black flag, but I didn't, which was a surprise to me. It's the first time they've done that.
3rd place in the point standings going into tonight's event from Hockenheim Ring after getting the win at Interlagos in race number 5. So with this podium finish, how much momentum does that give you for the rest of this PCA Series 10 season in the pro class? And how are you going to try to use that to your advantage heading for the next race?
Coming out of this, I am not sure about qualifying points, but I think that puts me on the top of the championship right now. If not, then it'll be Pies. But I was really worried about Raph and him spinning out kind of breath, like kind of like put some relief on my shoulders. I didn't think I would, my first full season in pro, I didn't think I'd be up even in the top 5. So this is really exciting, and I've really just got to like put everything into the last 2 races because I'm not going to get a break from pies. So this is going to be an interesting finish for sure.
Competition is really high, and we know you're at the top of your game. And Jesse, with a great second place finish after the mistakes early on in the race, I'm sure you're happy about that. And a big congratulations from all of us at the Podium Esports broadcast team, and best of luck heading for Watkins Glen in a couple of weeks. An amazing race tonight.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, I just have to say a shout out from my mom because she was really upset that I didn't do it at Interlagos for Mother's Day. So love you, Mom.
All right, shout out to Mom. Jesse Lyon, the second place finisher here at Hockenheim Ring. An absolutely outstanding effort. And we'll talk now to Justin Sang in the 188 car. Joe Peak, you've got him.
Indeed. Speaking of Interlagos, Justin, I'm sure it's got to be frustrating. You got a second there. You came so close to win here. And as frustrating as that is, that's got to be at least positive for you, knowing that things are kind of on the upswing. You got 2 podiums in a row.
Yeah, it's good to finish on the podium, but very disappointed with my pit strategy because I thought I was smart taking an extra 1 less lap of gas, but I didn't expect the race to go that quick, and we went a lap over. So I was trying to slow down, making sure we go 36 laps instead of 37, and then everyone passed me by then.
How early did you realize that was going to be a problem? Was it just a few laps away, or were you like pretty soon after the pit stops?
It was right after Paez pitted, and I look at the calculator. It shows 36.1, and I was like, man, it's gonna go 1 lap over. So I tried to go slower, try to like back down that delta. But it wasn't enough.
It wasn't in the end. And then afterwards, at least you made it to the finish line. But I mean, how difficult was it to try and save enough fuel to make it that extra?
Definitely, it's not fun. Trying to go, not get past and try to go quick enough. It's like you're like stuck between a rock and a hard place. Yeah, it wasn't too fun at the end, but still fun to lead a bunch of the laps this race.
And you did so admirably. You looked very comfortable up there. Again, congratulations on a third. Anybody you want to thank?
You guys and the PCA admin, the sponsors, Porsche Exchange. So thank you to everybody.
That was Justin Sang, who came away with a third today after starting in second. And we, of course, want you to make sure and join us here again on Wednesday, May 31st at 9:25 p.m. Eastern for the sport class. We'd also like to thank our sponsors for Series 10, which includes the Porsche Exchange and Six Sigma Sim Racing. Big thanks to the steering committee at PCA Sim Racing, and a huge thanks to our team tonight, Kenneth, Ryan, Cameron, and Dougie. Also, none of this is possible without those behind the scenes at Podium Esports, Ryan Bauer, Gary Sexton, and John Theodore. Thank you so much for watching tonight's broadcast of PCA Sim Racing. I'm Joe Peak, and we'll see you on the track.